when we quit, we didn't know I was going to do magic. It was one of those things where I knew the first move for us to be in a healthier place and a better place as a family was to not be in the place we were at as far as my career. And so it was incredibly scary, but it also was like, we don't have an option. I cannot stay here.
I'm Katie.
I'm Anna.
She's a psychotherapist.
And she runs a photography empire. Together we make music and we podcast
to encourage ourselves
and you
to do the things that scare us most.
Hey everybody, my name is Taylor Hughes and I am a professional wonder chaser. So I do comedy, magic, storytelling, but everything I do is to try to encourage and compel people to kind of examine what else might be out there that they're not thinking about. So
wow,
that's what I do.
That's amazing.
And card tricks.
That sounds delightful.
I have seen some of the card tricks. They're pretty amazing. How in the world did you get started on this journey?
So I started doing magic when I was a kid. When I was 7 years old, my stepdad's best friend, who was like his former roommate in college, was a stand-up comedian. And so he'd come over to the house and like, I didn't know he was a comedian. He was just the funniest guy I'd ever met. And he would do crazy things at the dinner table that I couldn't explain. And what I found out later is he started off as a magician as a kid. So he would do all these like sleight of hand things, like shove the salt shaker through the dinner table or make a knife float at the table. And one day my mom asked him, would he do a show for my birthday? And he did a show for my birthday, and I just lost my mind. I couldn't believe this was a thing people actually do.
And then it's all over from there.
And I've been right in that moment ever since.
You're like, I just live there.
So I started doing magic when I was a kid, and I kept doing magic all throughout junior high school. It was like my first real job. I remember I got hired to do Shannon Carter's 10th birthday party, and they offered me $10 and all the pizza I could eat, and I thought that like the $10 was a tip. Like I just wanted the pizza. And so I did that. And I just started doing like birthday parties on the weekends. So when all my friends in high school were like working at McDonald's and Jack in the Box, I'd be doing like Bobby's bar mitzvah on a Saturday night. And it was awesome. Yeah. And then did it all throughout college. I spent years as a youth pastor. 6 years ago, we kind of left that season of life and I went full-time joining the circus, and it's been insane and amazing all at the same time.
Is joining the circus a figure of speech, or did you literally join a circus?
No, it is a figure of speech. Yeah. I've done many weird shows that could constitute as circus shows.
Yes. Well, I have friends who actually were in the circus, so I was wondering like, oh
amazing.
My gosh, do you know them?
Probably. If you know anyone who like has a monkey or can juggle on a unicycle, we've probably crossed paths.
Excellent.
Oh my gosh.
Or if you need someone who has a monkey who can ride a unicycle, I can probably help you out.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Everyone, listeners, we will make sure that his contact information is available.
I mean, who doesn't need those things, honestly?
Yeah, that'll be a Patreon perk. Just go support the show.
That's a good idea. What was that like to take that jump? So we talk a lot about fear on this podcast.
Sweet.
So 6 years ago when you switched over, tell us about that.
So I spent years as a youth pastor and a children's pastor, which is wild because I never intended to do it, even though I was born with this face and I kind of always look like someone's pastor. I can't get rid of it. This is just how I look. I spent years on staff at a church that I grew up at. I kind of just happened into it. It was never something that I thought I wanted to do. I always wanted to do entertainment. In that season of life, I was just all about like, hey, whatever I can do to help, like whatever your dream is, I want to build your dream. And yeah, like 13 years into this career, I was just in a place where I was just, I can't do this. It's not definitely not the place that I want to be in as far as like, healthy leadership and all that stuff. And this is just never the calling I felt on my life or the purpose for my life. So we walked away from it with a wife and 2 kids under 8 years old. And we were just kind of floating for like a couple months. I was watching the money in the bank account go away and, doing that thing where you go like, okay, I think we have about 6 weeks left before we have nothing. And so I said I could either go get a job at Starbucks. I mean, I had nothing on my nothing on my resume other than being a youth pastor. What good is that in the real world? Like, you know what I mean? So it was either go work at Starbucks, which is a great gig, and if you're doing that, that's amazing. I think on a regular basis how much I might enjoy that better. But I thought, or I can try to give this entertainment thing a go and see if we can support a family with it, and that's all we've done since. So it's been insane.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about fear, I'm all about it. Let's talk.
I want to hear everything.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, and I also want to mention, so not only the wife, the 2 kids, you're living where at that time?
At the time, so we had sold. Wow, this is a deep story. We had sold our house at the direction of the church that I worked for.
Oh, so you're also
which is a long
homeless.
story. Like, yeah. We had been living in a hotel for for a while. And then we found an apartment. We're like, well, I guess while we're waiting to find out where they're going to send us, we'll just get an apartment somewhere. And so we had this 2-bedroom apartment. We had no money in savings. And I just quit my job in my career and literally like said goodbye to every person we ever knew. Because it was one of those places where if you're not with us, you're against us. Unfortunately, like overnight, we kind of lost our whole community and connection to other people too.
Wow.
So joining the circus sounded fun.
Well, no, I appreciate you sharing that so much. And I just want to point out, like, we're laughing about it now and it's 6 years later, but you know, that's really heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, I guess, the courage that took and the conversations that you and your wife had during that time.
You know, it sounds, the idea of quitting your job to like do a career that you've always wanted to do sounds so idealistic. Like it just sounds like this beautiful journey, and it has been a beautiful journey. But when we quit, we didn't know I was going to do magic. It was one of those things where I knew the first move for us to be in a healthier place and a better place as a family was to not be in the place we were at as far as my career. And so it was incredibly scary, but it also was like, we don't have an option. I cannot stay here. That's what's kind of funny is it's like I have so many friends. It's like, oh man, I'm doing this day job, and then I got my side hustle, and I keep thinking like, well, man, if I just had the courage to quit the day job and to go for the thing. And for us, it wasn't even that at first. It was just like, we gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
Like this environment is gonna destroy our family, and we have to leave.
Yeah.
And then it was like, well, how do you make money? You know?
Well, totally. But also, I just think a lot of people would have just jumped into a job, you know, or they wouldn't have quit until they had so many gigs lined up or, you know, that quote unquote backup plan. So
That's true. Yeah.
I think it's so interesting that you had this experience from basically childhood where it was very natural to just go and do this, you know, instead of working at McDonald's or whatever. And then like sort of the adult version of that. Now you're sort of established and you have a family and you have these responsibilities that you generally don't have in high school and college. And it was kind of like a bigger, riskier version of that didn't feel so natural to just slide into it. But I love that you recognized at that point of decision, like I can either go get a job or I can actually do this. Maybe.
Well, in the maybe is a big one.
Yeah.
Like, so my wife is Katie. So my Katie and I talked, and I said, you know, when we were trying to figure out what we were going to do, I definitely knew. I'm like, I'm not working at another church. I never wanted to be a pastor, so why would I try to pursue that? But we were trying to figure out, okay, what's our next move? What are we going to try? And I said to her, I said, you know, I know that. I mean, at the time, I was 33 years old. And I just laugh now.
I want to know why you're laughing.
Well, it's just crazy. It's just insane. But I said, I have always wondered, like since I was 7 years old, I wanted to do magic and I wanted to entertain and perform and encourage people through like this different avenue. And I know that if when I'm 80 years old, I never gave this a go, I'm going to regret it. And I don't want to regret it. So I think we got to give this a go. And if we try it and we can't pay our bills, then I will get any job I need to get. Like we're just going to do whatever we got to do to take care of the family. But I feel like for me, I have to at least have had a moment where I gave it my all and said, like, what if?
Yeah.
And then about a year and a half later of doing that and like squeaking by and paying the bills, I went, okay, now I think I have to do this, not like give it a go. Like, this is it. This is what I want to do with my life, which is crazy. And I love it. And I love every moment.
Oh, so good. Well, talk to us about, so what does your day-to-day look like, your month-to-month, your year?
When you're an entertainer, whether or in any sort of production, like whether you're, making film or you're a vocalist or you play in a band, or you're a musician or a comedian or a juggler. I know a lot of jugglers.
Amazing.
It's almost like being a realtor, where every day you get up and work and hustle, and you're constantly trying to get the gig. Like, every day is a job interview. Every day is, I hope they like me enough to hire me, and then I'm going to work my butt off to do the best job I can for them. And if they love me, maybe they'll hire me again in 2 years. It's a constant hustle. Like, it's not like a lot of people think, oh, you get to a certain level and then you don't have to grind it out anymore. And the truth is, every day you just got to get up and work and figure out where's the next gig coming.
Yeah.
What do I need to do career-wise or content-wise or creation-wise to put myself in a position where more people are coming to find you and you're not having to constantly go out and find people who want to hire you.
Yeah, that sounds pretty terrible. Right?
And you're like, I think I need to do this. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
That's so honest, though.
Yeah.
I appreciate your candor about that, because it's not like you hit a certain point and then you're just like coasting.
Right.
Yeah, no, and I totally relate to what you're saying, and I just love that you're highlighting that of like, yeah, people think it's like me traveling around the world again, and like I'm in a hotel room and like, you know what I mean? And it's like constant job interview. That's the perfect analysis.
Yeah. And I don't want to sound down about it. Like, I love it. I absolutely love it. And I'm doing some new things right now that I think are going to change that paradigm. But yeah, it is. I mean, it's just, if you're going to do it, you got to know what you're getting into. And nobody tells you, like, none of the books people write tell you the truth of what it's like to, if you get a job in New York, oh, I'm going to New York to perform. I live in California, right? So you go like, oh, I'm going to go perform this killer show in New York. And what nobody tells you is that you got hired to perform at a banquet in New York City where people are eating rice pilaf. You're going to be near an airport. You're nowhere near actual New York. You're going to spend 3 days getting there, setting up, performing, and coming back to work for like an hour.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? The rest of your time is spent in airports and Red Roof Inns and all this nonsense just to get to the gig. And, you have to have that little bit of like Finding Nemo, just keep swimming vibe. Let's just keep going.
It strikes me that you sort of started pursuing this for real, as a grown-up, as a full-fledged grown-up, right? Yeah. In the wake of like this massive total life transition, you basically left your whole community behind for the better. It sounds like, went to a new place, didn't have stuff lined up. So how did you figure out logistically what to do when you got up and hustled every day?
I had nothing lined up at the time. Part of our story is when I was trying to figure out if we were going to leave the previous place, I would go on the weekend and do a show and people would laugh and clap and we'd have a great time, and then they'd hand you money. And so it was like this amazing escape. And so I felt like, okay, if I'm going to make this decision, if like leaving this career path and this community is what I'm really going to do, I need to be all in it for a moment so that I'm not wondering, like, did I not give it my all, So all that to say, for a year before we left the church, I stopped performing completely. Like, I took down my website, I changed my phone number, I gave away 6 months worth of gigs to friends.
Wow.
So when we started, like day one, when I said I'm going to perform, I didn't have anything. I didn't have any props. I didn't have any, nothing. Like, I didn't have shoes that I could wear to go out and perform at a banquet. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so all of that to say, like, I still had those skills that I had honed for years, like if you stop playing guitar for a year, you come back to it, you might be rusty, but you still know how to play. But I needed to find like a foot in the door and an opportunity. And so the first move I made was trying to connect with other people who were doing it and just say, hey, look, here's where I'm at. Like a lot of people in this business are so trying to put a front on and trying to make it look like they've got it all together. And I have found incredible freedom through vulnerability and sitting down from someone who's incredibly successful and going, look, I love what you're doing. I want to get there. I'm not there. Here's where I'm at. If there's anything I can do to help you, and if there's anything you can do to help me, let's make sure we all, you know, and that's been like a beautiful way to approach this whole thing. And I've just kept doing that. Like, I mean, if I've got friends who are starting out now and they're doing a show in Santa Monica at a comedy club and they want me to drive 3-hour round trip to perform for 5 minutes, I'll do it. If I'm not booked, like I'll come out and do it. So, that for me was the thing, was like finding a new community through other people who are just trying to do the thing and pay their bills in the process. And so that was how I got started, was just making phone calls and talking to people, and not to try to like get them to book me, but just to be like, you know, you've got some knowledge that I don't have. How can I get access to that? You know, how can I learn through osmosis what's worked for you?
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And just like you're saying, just being honest about where you're at, what you're wanting to do. I think that's so powerful, putting that out in the world.
Yeah, I mean, everywhere you go, especially in LA. I mean, we live 35 miles east of LA, but we spend a ton of time in downtown and in Hollywood. And it's so, I mean, I love LA to death. Like, everyone around here complains about driving into town. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, look at the skyline. This is the place where everybody in the world is trying to get to. Like, this is where all of the great stuff you love started. Like, quit complaining about the thing that gives you life. But all that said, like, it's funny to walk down, you know, you walk down Santa Monica Boulevard and you see all of these amazing cafes and everybody outside is like dressed to the nine, and they, you know what I mean? And they're just like eating the most expensive thing, and they got all the mixed drinks at like noon, and you're like, who are these people? Yeah. And I would argue that 90% of those people just got off work at Subway from working the graveyard shift at a gas station and are spending every dime they have to try to look like they're doing the thing rather than doing the thing. Ooh. And yes, and the danger of that, not only for them, is like, you know, they may get discovered at the grocery store. We've heard that story. It's probably not going to happen. Like, it's going to happen through the hustle, right? But the danger for us is we look at them and go like, man, I'm not eating that food. I'm not buying those clothes. Like, what am I doing wrong? I think the more honest we are with each other, the more all of us are going to be in a better mental health state and be able to like keep going in this thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a brilliant point. Part of being vulnerable, like you're saying, and putting yourself out there, people can't help you if they don't know how to help you. Right. You know, so if you're creating this illusion of I've got it all together, like I don't need money, nobody's going to call you for that job if they, you know, they're going to think, oh, they're too busy. They don't have time for that.
It's
you know?
so true. And I found, like, because there's this balance of the game that we play. Like, I have to put like tour dates on social media. So people know where I'm at, right? So people who will come out to see a show, but also so other people go, wow, he's working. Like, there is this balance of sometimes people don't want to hire you to do something unless you're already doing it. So if they see you're busy, they want you to do it. But at the same time, when it comes to like opportunities that you would totally take, certain people will go like, oh, they would never do that. I'm like, I would do that. Like, you know what I mean? But they just go like, oh, but you were just on this thing and you were performing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like last Saturday night, I hosted a show at one of my favorite venues in LA, and it was all headliners. Like Taylor Tomlinson, Dimitri Martin, Sashir Zameda. Like every single one of these people have Netflix specials. You know what I mean? And I knew when I posted that, like I was excited just to be like, look at the fun thing I get to do. But I know there are people now who are like, oh, Taylor's like at this different level. And I'm like, fool, it cost me money to go get out there and do that. Like, I didn't, you know what I'm saying? It's not, I kind of went off on something there.
No, it's good. It's such a hard balance because you're exactly right. Like you have to show that you're qualified. You have to show that you've played at this level, but then like, that you're available. Like, I'm available for hire still.
And unfortunately, so unfortunate that we can't control the assumptions that other people make.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. you know, we want to create this experience or this content or this persona online, but the danger is sometimes that can work against us if we don't continue to give the right people access into our life and to see where we're really at, you know, in the process and all of that. I had a buddy who called me recently who was like, I'm not working. What do I do? Like, he's got this skill, he's got this ability, like he's a great presenter, performer, but he's just not the clients aren't finding him. And so I said, here's a good piece of advice for anyone who's trying to do this. If you know somebody who's working, there's probably going to be times they get asked to do it and they can't do it. So I would call somebody and I would say, look, don't recommend me for anything that you don't think I'm qualified for, or I don't want to. I only want to make you look good by recommending me. But if you recommend me, look, I need dough this month. I'll give you half of what I make on the gig. If you just, you know, and I'll recommend anyone who comes to me after that back to you from that gig. But just being creative and being like, okay, look, like the community of performers or videographers or, you know, photographers or whatever it is that you do, those people are hearing every day of things, and some of the things they can take and some of them they can't. But like, if you go, hey, rather than you recommend someone else who's just going to take that gig, like recommend me and I'll point him back to you and I'll send you some money as a thank you.
I really appreciate that you're like, hey, what's a mutually beneficial way to do this? And that is your approach from the outset. Like, that in and of itself is magic, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Because I mean, we've all met people who are just like going, like trying to climb that ladder and like step on everybody along the way. And if I have any tips or secrets to this business and survival in it, it's just take care of people, like love people in the process and just be a good human and things will work out.
Yeah, that's such good advice. And your method definitely goes back to the hustle. So I appreciate that. I think, and something we've talked about on here before is like, also, if you're on the other end of that, where you are in that position to recommend people, like that's such a potentially powerful place to be, you know, and like, don't forget your friends, you know, pay attention to who is working hard and who does deserve that job, and take the extra 2 minutes to recommend them,
so
you know?
Good, Katie. I mean, there's times where I'll get asked to do something and I could do it. Like I could pull it off, but I immediately, like a friend will pop in my mind and I'll be like, oh, Simone should have that job. Like she would do better at that than I would.
That's so generous.
The temptation is just to go like, oh, well, I need the money or I want to do this. But we have to look at this whole thing as not just a community, but like the art form as a whole. Like, especially with magic, if somebody hires a crappy magician or they have a bad experience, they will never hire a magician again. Like if you see a band and they're not great, you don't go, well, music sucks. But people do that with a variety of arts. Like if you had a juggler and they were awful, you're never going to book a juggler again. So it's not even just being like, oh, you know, totally selfless. It's like, it's better for all of us, for the best person for that job to get that job. And then maybe next time they'll have something else and they'll book one of us, you know? So I can't tell you how many times I've had like cool like TV gigs come up and I've been like, oh, I'm not right for that show. I mean, I got the youth pastor face. Like I'm not, I'm not going to be the person on that show. Like just have my buddy Joel go do it. Like, but we just have to have that. We just have to have that attitude.
What kind of face does Joel have?
It's a nice face. Joel's like my exact same age and looks like 15 years younger than me. But
oh my God.
You know.
Youth isn't everything.
I'm just being completely honest. I never noticed the youth pastor face. Like never. I never would have pegged you as that if you hadn't told me.
Oh, jeez.
What else is happening in your world? You have one or more podcasts?
So I started a podcast and kind of on this subject we've been talking about here of like just helping each other out. I do a podcast called About to Break. And it's all about trying to break into an industry before it breaks you. And it's just been like the coolest thing to connect with other people doing this life, you know? And when I say this life, not just performing, but like any sort of entrepreneurial, like doing what you love, trying to pay the bills, trying to stay sane, which is how I met you and Dan through this podcast. Like, it's the only way we even know each other.
Yeah, so cool.
And so it's one of those things that people look at and they go like, oh, how's that podcast? Like, you just making all that podcast money? And I'm like, no.
Wait, who has said that to you
Oh,
ever?
I've had a lot of people not in the business.
I was going to say,
No.
they know nothing about how podcasts work.
Yeah, there's just so much money in it.
Or they're Joe Rogan's best friend or something.
Right.
I don't know.
They just see all these celebrities and they go like, oh, you must be. That's how it works, right? You just press record. But it has, that has been one of the best things for me, just emotionally and personally, is, I was at a moment, we gone through this like major traumatic experience. Like, I pulled my kids out of a lifestyle that I was like, this is the most important thing in the world. And then it's like, we're never going to do that again. And your dad's going to be a magician. I mean, we're all in counseling.
Praise the Lord.
But praise the Lord. Yes.
I love it.
But we, all that to say, like, we started this thing and the other danger of this business, or of any sort of entrepreneurial thing, is there's major highs and major lows. And they can happen days apart, or they can happen months apart. You'll have 1 month where you'll get a check and you'll be like, I've never seen this much money in my life. And then you'll have 2 months where it's like people don't even know you exist and it's a ghost land. And it was in one of those moments that I went to do a really crappy show at a comedy club, and the show was amazing, like a just life-giving show. But backstage in the green room, I was talking to people who, like, one of them was on The Tonight Show the week before, and another one was working on a new Netflix series. And like, everyone's doing these things, and all of us are having the same discussion of like, hey, it's pretty rough, right? Like, when it's great, it's great. And when it's not, it's not. And I realized very few people outside of these kind of rooms are hearing these conversations. And so I just wanted to do a show where I invited great people who the world thinks is killing it in an area, to just share like, hey, what's going great? What's going, rough? What have you learned to kind of help you through the process? And that's what About to Break is about.
So cool. So how long have you been doing that?
I've been doing that. I started in 2016, so just over 3 years. This is the first time I've taken like a extended break on it. So like, it's been about a month since I've posted, which is both making me like really uncomfortable, but it's also been good. I'm still like recording conversations with people and building the show, but I'm working on a couple other projects right now that I just needed to take a little step back and, balance the time and focus on that. So
totally. Can you tell us about those, or are they top secret?
No, I can tell you. So one of them is a comedy magic special that I just taped in January. And this is the next step in our fear. You talk about fear a lot on this show. This is incredibly scary, but it's just one of those things I knew I needed to do. Like, in this business, most magicians for sure, and comedians, not so much comedians, but magicians and variety artists, we borrow audiences. So like, we perform at events. We don't perform our thing. We perform for other people's thing, right? So I wait for a company who's got a client to come to me and invite me to perform for them. And that's great. And that pays the bills. But then I noticed all my friends who are comedians are like building an audience and trying to connect with a community that likes what they do so they can do more of it for them. And so I said, what if I did that with magic? So we just Dan got to be there and was part of it. But I just did a show at Dynasty Typewriter in LA. We did 2 shows. I brought out a crew, and we just did it up. We filmed the whole thing like you'd film a Netflix special, without having a deal. So like, even at this point, we're in post-production. I don't know where this is going to live. I don't know what platform it's going to be on. I may have just made a really expensive YouTube video with my kids' college money, but we did it, and we'll see what happens.
That's so cool. So you essentially just hired your own people. Like, you hired somebody that's editing it now and all of that?
Again, part of like the podcast and like doing this business is you just meet cool folks who are doing great stuff. And so I kind of got to handpick friends who do production stuff, and I flew some of them out from the East Coast, and we did a 4-camera shoot, and now they're editing it all. It's in post-production, and Dan worked on some music for it. Like, we're just doing all the things, and we'll see what happens.
Well, thanks for sharing that too, because I mean, I honestly don't know how often that is the case, but my guess would be that more often than we know, people have done what you've done. Is like, I'm just going to go for it. I'm not going to wait on this like $1 million deal or people to come knock on my door and ask me to do it. I'm going to like make this happen, right?
Yeah, that is definitely like one of the routes people take. In comedy, magicians just don't do this in general. Like,
yeah,
most magicians just go like, okay, I'm happy to be like, when I'm 60, I'll still be performing at like Cub Scout banquets and stuff, which is great. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. But if you want to do something different and you want to do theater and you want to connect with people, you have to create content that they can connect with, and nobody's going to ask you to do it. Like, nobody's just going to show up at your door and be like, hey, you want a Netflix deal? You know, you just got to make good stuff. And you got to believe in yourself enough to go like, look, Katie and I sat down and we're like, worst case scenario, this thing just goes on YouTube and it still will be worth it. We just have to believe that putting this stuff out there is gonna, people will connect with it.
Yeah,
so
I love that message so much. I think it's so important for people to hear that nobody's knocking on your door asking you to do it. I love that.
Yeah.
In the photography world, like, it's insane to me. These people are just starting out, no experience, will not drive 30 miles for $100. I'm like, do you even know? Like, that's a decent gig. You know what I mean? Like, you have to get out there and do it and like just make stuff happen. Yeah.
You just have to do it. And not thinking that like certain things are beneath you, right? Like,
yes.
There's certain things certain types of shows I say no to now, and that's only within the past month. But it's not because I think they're beneath me. It's just because I know they're not giving me joy, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, either do it for the money or do it because it brings you joy, or because it is, you're adding value to other people. But if I get asked to do a gig and I go, look, when I leave, they're not going to care that I was there. It's not going to pay the bills, and I'm not going to feel good, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. It's like, sometimes it's just not a good fit.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean it's beneath you, but I think the mindset there is completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you get in a danger zone too, where you start talking bad about certain things. And it's like, well, those things got you to where you were. Like, if I didn't do like hundreds and hundreds of kids' birthday parties, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, And I got to be careful, like, that someday down the road, like, if it all works out and I'm in a different place, that I'm not talking bad about what I'm doing today, because it was part of the journey. It's part of the steps,
Yeah, that's so good. It's just such good self-awareness. It's like,
you caught me on a good day,
it's like
Katie. If you talked to me
positivity
yesterday, I'd be like, what am I doing?
Yeah, right.
Which is also a normal part of the journey.
Yes, there's room for that too.
But I was going to say, it's like that meme that's been floating around probably forever, but like, remember a time when you prayed for, wanted what you have today, So it's like exactly what you're saying, enjoying every step of the way, being grateful for the opportunities, but also, to me, that's a huge sign of success, to be like, this isn't checking these boxes. This isn't going to bring me joy. And so I'm going to sacrifice, this money to not do it, because I'll be better off.
Yeah, it indicates progress, really.
We forget that, like, we get to say, part of doing what we do as entrepreneurs is so we don't have to do the things we don't want to do. You can't complain about something. Like, I have friends who like complain about a gig, and I'm like, well, who made you do that?
Yeah.
You said yes.
Yeah. Don't
say yes. I mean, granted, we all like get into situations where it was supposed to be one thing and you get there and it's another, and it's fun to joke about, but it's like, don't complain. Like, every day you wake up and you do what you want to do. You don't have a boss. Like, if you quit tomorrow, there would be no one to tell. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so don't complain about it as much.
Yeah. Totally. Well, and again, it's like your decision. Like, you chose this over working at McDonald's. Like, do you want to go work at McDonald's? Like, would that be better? Because if not, stop complaining.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and if you listen to any episode of my podcast, you will find me complaining about.
No.
So I'm a total hypocrite right now. But it is. No. I'm grateful that I married my high school sweetheart, and she's known me forever. and she understands this business, but she is also not trying to be a performer. So she has this great balance of like, I'll come to her and I'll be like, oh, this thing is happening and like, and it's going to be so great. And then it'll happen. And then I'll be like, oh, but when this happens, and then she literally will stop and be like, will you be happy then? Like, are you gonna, so when that happens, will you like, just enjoy the room you're in? Like, quit trying to get backstage. You're already in the VIP section. Like, so we need voices like that to just remind us when it's cruddy.
No, totally. Well, also, I mean, obviously I can tell from the stories you've told that she's been very encouraging along the way as well. And so I think it's like both sides of encouragement of like, yes, go do it.
Yeah.
But also like, enjoy it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
That gets hard.
Everybody needs a Katie.
Everyone needs a Katie.
Talk to us about where you're sitting right now.
So I'm sitting in the World Shed Quarters.
Yes.
Best name ever.
It's a complete mess right now. I would move the camera to show you, but I don't want to mess up the cords. So I'll send you pictures and stuff. But we live in California. We're very, very, very blessed to have a home in California. I still don't know how that happened. And every month when I pay the mortgage, I go, "What? We did it again!" But all that to say, we have like a tiny like a runway of a backyard. Like it's like
shotgun.
Yeah, it's very, very small backyard, and it's like long. I was working a couple years ago. I was doing the podcast. Like I was editing the podcast, and I was recording with people, and I was doing all this stuff in the house. And you know, I've got an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old now. The time the kids were younger, and it was just like I can't kick my family out of the house every time I have to work. Or if I'd get a business call, I needed to quickly like get to a place to make the call. And at the time I was looking at like renting a little office. We have like a little downtown by us. And I was like, oh, I'll rent one of these offices. And even those, I mean, not expensive for LA by any means. It was like $500 a month. But I'm like, I can't spend $500 a month on a place to make phone calls and edit podcasts and shoot videos and practice card tricks. Like I just can't do that. I don't have it. And so we were trying to figure out like creative ideas, and one day we were at Costco, and Costco was selling these kits. Like they had this rad looking like shed, and it's a 8x10 shed. It's not that big, but it's like a little room, and we were looking at this shed, and it had like the barn doors on it, and we were like, I think we could make that as like a room in our backyard. And so we started doing some research, and we found out in our city, if you build something that's under 120 square feet, which this is 96 square feet.
Amazing.
But if the footprint is under 120 square feet, the city doesn't care about it. Like they would know permits. We don't want to know anything about it. Like if it's not attached to your house and it's not more than 120 square feet, do whatever you want. So we're like, okay.
Deal.
So we built in our backyard the outside of the shed, but then we replaced the doors. We put like legit, like real French doors on it. We insulated the whole thing. We drywalled it. We did shiplap on the ceiling. We put electrical in. We just made this amazing little oasis that's literally 6 feet out my back door. So, I just come out here now, and what's great is having a place, like a dedicated place to work where it's like, this is where work happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes if friends are over, we'll come in here, but we don't it's not like a hangout area. This is like a work area.
Yeah. So
now I can record podcasts with people, and I can edit shows, and I can work on my new shows that I do. And it's just been something amazing about having this place. And before we built this, I did this in a 4 foot by 4 foot closet in our house. I just had a little desk in there, and I had microphones set up, and there's videos that are still like on my page that they have like sound soak behind them, and it looks so cool with this microphone and the sound soak. I'm like, I'm in the broom closet in my house. Like you don't need to have much to just make a space where you can be creative and put stuff together. So that's where I'm at right now.
So much.
The shed quarters.
The World Shed Quarters.
I have so much appreciation for your general wordplay skills. Like, I love the name of your podcast too. I think the double meaning of about to break is amazing. And now there's shed quarters, so.
See, dad jokes. Everything's a pun.
You win the prize.
Thank you.
Anna's really, really good at dad jokes.
I'll be a great dad someday.
Thank you, Anna.
No, I think that's such a great example of a creative solution. I love it so much. This is a true story. You may not know this about Dan Taylor.
Oh, I love it. I love it already.
Yeah, I mean, for years, long before you did this,
yeah,
we would go to the Home Depots or the Lowe's. We'd walk through the sheds. They have 2-story sheds. Do you know this?
They got ones that have like a loft in them.
So I'm pretty sure his long-term dream is for us to live in one of these sheds. So you're making it seem really possible.
I mean, if you blindfolded someone and you brought them in here, they would think they were in like a cool place somewhere. Like, it doesn't, and It looks nice on the outside. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, all in this thing, like total with all the gear and everything that I use was under $3,000.
Wow.
And we own it forever, and it's at our house. You know what I mean? So it's like
6 months of rent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we didn't do it all at once. Like, I didn't just go like, here's my $3,000 for building a shed. Like,
right. Here's my podcast money.
Yeah. I use that sweet, sweet podcast money. But you just do what you can when you can do it, and you go like, okay, today, I think we got enough today that we can get some insulation. And then you get there and you go, oh, half the insulation, you just, whatever, just do what you can do.
This has been great. I want to ask you about Wonder, but is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'm actually I'm working with Katie's Dan, and he works a lot quicker than I am. I'm behind on this project, but all that to say, we are, I'm going to start a new show. The title of my special is Chasing Wonder, and I want to start a new podcast in line with Chasing Wonder. And the whole idea is, like, in my show, I talk about the fact that, like, we don't wonder anymore. We just Google. Like, we go from not knowing to just, I want the answer right now. And there's something powerful about getting into a place where you can just be in awe and mesmerized by something, which is why we like a good magic trick. Because it gets us back to a place where you're like 5 and it's Christmas morning and anything's possible. And so I want to start a show called Chasing Wonder, where I just take people who are experts in an area that most folks would go like, they've seen it all, and put them in a state of wonder. So, like take a friend who's like an incredible celebrity chef and take them to a restaurant that blows their mind, and just talk about why is it that a good meal can kind of get us out of whatever situation we're in and like reset our mind to like possibility, or take my buddy Bob Goff to Disneyland and say, why did you decide when you could have had your office, when you could have afforded a $500 a month office, why did you choose to come and have your office at Disneyland? Like, what is it about that and getting people in a place where, they experience something new? Why is that important? And so, yeah, I'm working on this show idea, and Dan's been working with me with like scoring it and kind of making it a little bit more of a production than my other podcast, which is just sad entertainers laughing about tragedy. And so, so I'm really, really excited about that.
So cool.
About to Break has been so good for people who get this world, but I'm sure other people who don't get this world would be like, that's great, but it's not for me. Mm-hmm. And so that's been a great resource for connecting with other people in the business. I want to make something that anybody can listen to and can be encouraged that, hey, your day may have started terrible, but like wonder might be right around the corner if you just open your eyes to the fact that like every day amazing things are happening. And the amazing things don't have to necessarily be like some big spectacular thing. It could just be, I didn't miss that opportunity to like connect with my neighbor because like my eyes were open to that they were actually there, and I didn't just wave as I closed the garage door. So yeah, I'm excited about that. I don't know what it's going to look like, but we're going to do it.
That's so cool. Oh, that gave me chills.
That reminds me of what you were saying about your Katie telling you, like, hey, just like be in the room you're in. Don't always be gunning for the next, the next achievement or whatever, or the next high experience, because that's the paradox. Like, actually, if you can tune in and open your eyes and pay attention, like there's so much right here, right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. We're always like one step ahead.
Yeah.
And we've all done this. Like you go to some networking event, which is the terrible word in general, but like you go to some event where you're like, it's like, oh, there's gonna be all these industry people there, and you're talking to someone who you're genuinely interested in, and they're looking around like who else might be more important in the room, you know? And I think that's why podcasting is great. It's like you get with one person, you just talk about their life, and like at the end of it, you're like, how did we not be best friends forever? Well,
exactly.
You don't need to have microphones to do it. Like this could happen in real actual life if we just acted this way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, I think that's so good. And I wanted to ask you, because I don't know if you said this on purpose or not, but at the very beginning of the episode, when you were talking about shifting away from youth ministry and figuring out what to do next, I heard you say something like, I just wondered if it could work out.
Oh, I didn't say it on purpose. That's funny.
But I think that's another interesting use of that word, because, what can wonder open up for us, you know? Looking at things a little differently.
Wow, that's cool.
Anyway, he's thinking.
And I think even like we talk about doing scary things and being full of fear, and like, whether it's whatever, you're quitting your normal gig to go do something else that your whole family's going to think is nuts, whatever it is, like everybody just goes, all right, what are the steps that everyone else took to do the thing? Well, the minute somebody succeeds, everything they did to succeed is obsolete, right? Like,
yes.
Like I could talk to Tom Hanks all day about what it was like to become an actor, but what he did in the 70s and 80s is not going to work today. Like,
yep.
So I just think that wonder is critical, because it gets us out of like just what are the steps to follow, and more of like, what is the state of mind I need to be in? What is the type of person, how do I need to be and exist so that I'm open to whatever could happen,
I think that's brilliant. I'm so excited. Okay.
I'm just laughing thinking back to like when I was 23 and was like, I know all the answers. Follow me.
That was a good time. That was a really good time.
We've done a 180. We know no answers anymore, but it's great.
Yeah.
Turns out you don't actually need the answers.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you've probably already answered this, but one question we love to ask everybody is, for our listeners at home, if somebody's thinking about taking a big scary step, they're not sure how it might work out, what advice would you give them in that moment?
I would say, why do you want to do it? Like, let why lead you. Because if you want to be famous just to be famous, great. But so what? Like, you want to be an influencer. What are you influencing people to do? What is the reason? And maybe the reason is just like, hey, I think I'm really good at this and I can make money and support a family. Great. If that's the reason, great. Maybe if it's, I want to leave the world a better place, great. Let that lead you. But if you're scared of something, knowing why you want to do it takes away some of the excuses. Like, it doesn't take away the fear. I'm still scared every single day. Like, I have huge issues. I just paid for a thing like that I'm still paying off, that like I don't know if it's going to be anything. You know what I mean? Like, that's really dumb to a lot of people. But knowing why I did it helps me go, okay, it's going to work out. Like, it's going to be fine. So I think if you're facing something right now and it's scary, if you don't need to do it, don't do it. But if you need to do it and you know why you need to do it, well, then your fear is pointless. Like, you're going to be scared every day. Like, we have irrational fears all the time, If it doesn't scare you that we have to get in airplanes and like fly, hundreds of miles in a tube crammed with people and jet fuel, that should be terrifying. Like, but we all at some point go, yeah, this is scary, but we have to do it because I have to get to Cleveland by tomorrow at 2:00.
Yeah.
So whatever you're facing right now that you're thinking like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. Well, yeah, you can do it. Like, you can do anything. Like,
I love it.
I was listening to One of the podcasts that really got me like interested in podcasts was Pete Holmes, and he was talking about the other day about how like people go like, I don't think I can die. Like, I'm afraid to die. This is getting really morbid or deep or whatever.
No,
but he's
you're
like,
good.
but people are like that's one of people's biggest fears, death, right? And he's like, old ladies do it. Like, everybody dies. You think you can't do the thing that every person ever has done? Get over yourself. Like, why do you think you're so different that you can't? And that may be like the far extreme, but I'm like,
no,
you're facing a situation right now where you're like, I just don't know if I can do. Yeah, you can do it.
Yeah.
Like, why do you think you're so fragile that you can't do something that you know you need to do?
Yeah.
You know, and as long as it's not like, you know, some crazy thing where you're going to hurt other people, don't do that. No, don't do that. But if it's like a good thing that you know you need to do, then yeah, so what if you're scared? Just do it anyway.
Do it anyway.
Do it anyway.
No, that's an interesting example with the death because no, I do want to talk about it because here's the thing. It is hard to die. And I mean, I'm not a medical expert, but I've been around it enough that I hear people say that. And sometimes, like, if you've sat with a loved one, like, it can take days, you know? So it's like, again, not to be too morbid, but to your point, you can do it. It doesn't mean it's not going to be hard. Like, it might be hard. It might take a while. That was the weirdest example ever.
No, it's true.
I love that too. I think that that's a very existentially rich example, and that kind of is a great perspective giver, you know? But what happened in my mind when you were talking about that was, yeah, if I can hurtle through the sky in a metal tube, I can send this email.
Right.
So that's the less existential version for anyone that needs it.
That's so good because like so many people seem fearless. Like I am one of those guys who when I'm drafting an email will be like, did I use the right word? Oh, was that the right word? Should I send it? I don't know. And I will write an email and then I'll sit there and be like, is this, I don't know. Did I say it right? Is it going to come across funky? Are they going to, what are they going to think when they read it? I can't, you can't gauge tone in an email, and then every time I get in that moment, I just hit enter. Boom.
Yes, just like, really quick. I do the same thing.
And then immediately you're like, oh, that's right. Like, I'm so worried. I think we're so worried often that other people are spending all this time thinking about us, and they're not.
Yeah.
Like, it's just us getting in our heads that, like, every move we make is so critical. No, just make a move. Like, do something. Do 5 things today that get you forward, Like, just move. So anyway, I sound like Tony Robbins now.
No, you'll make $1 million in a year. Just do 5 things.
Just do these 5 steps. All you got to do, look, do these 5 steps, and then DM
probably
5
book
people.
Calls with all of us,
Right.
And then you'll be good. No, I'm just kidding. Also, I'm just glad to know I'm not the only one that gets freaked out on airplanes because I have to medicate myself. There's a lot of sweating involved. And I fly a lot, and it is fine, but I do get very nervous.
It's insane. Like, it is. It's insanity that we all just act like it's like we all of us. We like.
You gotta just not think about it.
No.
You need the air blowing on you at all times, and it's better.
And everybody's got their thing. Like, your thing maybe you have your animal with you. Maybe you put on that paper mask, and you're like, I'm wearing a coffee filter. Nothing bad's gonna happen to me. Like, we're all just, like, trying to trick ourselves into being, like, I put on my hoodie and I got my AirPods and my little neck pillow. Like, I'm just thinking, like, this is what we do. This is stupid. What are we doing?
Here's what I do.
Why'd you do it?
I take one moment when we're going down the runway about to actually take off into the air, and I have a moment where I face it and I say, okay, I might die.
Let's do this.
If I perish, I perish. Now I'm going to sit back and enjoy my flight. Every time.
Wow, Anna, you're much braver than me. I turn my music on really loud. I face forward. I close my eyes, and I try not to think about it. That's it. It hasn't failed me yet.
I love it when you talk to people about being scared of flying, and they're like, "Well, it's more likely that you'll die in the car. Like you're more likely to die in a car crash." I'm like, that doesn't help. You have to take the car to the airport.
Right. I was in a car today too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time and for talking with us. This has been so great. How can people connect with you online and follow what you're doing?
I'm on all the things. I'm probably on Instagram most, and it's just at Magic Storyteller on Instagram. But I'm on the other stuff too. And then I got a website. It's taylorhughes.com. And if you send me 5 names of 5 people that you think should be a millionaire, I'll send you my ebook that I've just written this afternoon. It's 3 pages. I'm just joking. I don't have any ebook.
Signed up. I was like, yes, I want the ebook. Fix my life, Taylor. Tell me how to do it.
You don't need $1 million. You need 1 million people to each give you $1.
Okay, you need to go get started on your ebook. So
that's the title, I think.
Oh my goodness. Thank you guys for letting me crash the party. You all are awesome. Keep doing scary stuff.
Much.
It's been so great. Thanks for joining us today on the Doing Scary Things podcast. If you liked today's episode, please subscribe so you never miss one, leave a review, and share it with a friend. You can find our new album, Whisper, under the band name Jasper and Jade. Until next time.
We're here with Katie and Anna. Katie and Anna, tell us about the new project you're working on. We make it all morning radio.